Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your kind wishes about our wedding. And in case you wondered, we had a fantastic honeymoon and it's nice to be back. Before your questions, I want to talk about how I see the political landscape and then say something about the issue of social care. After a year of this government, it is clear they have been reckless on key issues that matter to people. On the NHS, David Cameron is today making history. He will be the first Prime Minister to have to set out 5 pledges to protect the health service from his policy, his government, and himself. Yet he has already broken 2 of those pledges, on maximum waiting times and on protecting the NHS budget. Hundreds of millions of pounds, which should be being used for patient care, is actually being wasted on handing out redundancy notices to staff from primary care trusts who may, depending on the changes the government announces, have to be rehired. David Cameron has spent a year mismanaging the NHS, and the consequence is chaos, confusion, and damaged patient care. And on the issue which this Conservative-led government has elevated above all others, deficit reduction, doubts are growing about their approach. In the last week alone, we have seen a range of figures reflecting the damaging impact of the government's austerity rhetoric on confidence of British firms and British consumers. These worrying signs make many people very suspicious of those who say there should be no debate about the direction of economic policy in this country. As we have said before, Labour would be tackling the deficit created by the financial crisis. But as we have repeatedly warned, this government is going too far and too fast, hitting families and making it harder to reduce the deficit. Labour's balanced plan would get the deficit down, put jobs first, and take people off benefits and into work. But my criticism of this government's economic policy, indeed its whole approach, goes much further. Beyond austerity and pessimism, they have set out no sense of the big challenges facing the country, no plan for the future, and no sense of national mission. They didn't do it in opposition, which in my view is why they didn't win a majority at the last general election, and they haven't done it in government either. The British people want more from our politics. That's why, since I became leader of the Labour Party, I have set out what I think are the 3 big challenges that our country faces. The unprecedented risk to the promise of Britain that the next generation should do better than the last. And now there is a debate in this country, led by Labour, about how a whole generation of young people can get jobs, education, and housing. The emergence of a new inequality between not just the top and the bottom, but between the very wealthy and everybody else. When I first talked about this idea of the squeezed middle, people wondered what it meant. Now there is a growing awareness it is a reality for people up and down this country, and it demands we create a different kind of economy. And the third challenge, how we build strong communities, the ties that bind us together, friends, family, and community life. This is once more territory my party is occupying. Now, these are insights which speak to my values and my politics, but they also reflect the learning that we have had in our policy review as we have talked to thousands of people up and down this country. That is what I meant when I said the first stage of opposition must be to go out, listen, and understand. Instead of opting for easy answers or quick fix solutions, I want my party to be crystal clear that our mission is to meet these challenges facing the country. It is not enough simply to be a good opposition. It is not enough even to address the issues where we lost trust. Given the scale of the challenges facing Britain, we must once again be the party, and I am determined that we are, that offers a compelling and optimistic vision for the future. Labour is determined to offer Britain a new sense of national mission, a sense of hope and purpose, which contrasts with the narrow pessimism of this government. And over the coming months, myself and key shadow cabinet colleagues will be talking about tackling these challenges and how we can surmount them in our country. Let me now say something about one long-term issue which has surfaced again in the past week. The problem of adult social care is not new, but this generation of politicians owes it not just to the vulnerable, but to the next generation in Britain, our children, to sort these problems out, not to leave them with a legacy of rising costs, falling standards of care, and a system in decline. The Panorama investigation, what happened at Southern Cross, and the Dilnot review all demand our urgent attention. I was shocked by the scenes I saw from the Winterbourne View care home. They sicken me and they shame our country. The government appears to believe that reviews by the Care Quality Commission and by South Gloucestershire Council are enough. It's not, and these reviews are not enough, because these bodies were involved in the failure. There must be an independent investigation into what happened and what lessons need to be learned, and the government should announce that review straight away. At Southern Cross, it is plain wrong that financiers creamed off millions, while, as we now know, the care of tens of thousands of elderly people was being put at risk. They seem to have been treated merely as commodities. As we have seen previously with the banks, there are industries, and health and social care services are one such example, where corporate failure has consequences which go far beyond shareholders and investors. Because just as with the banks, the government would in the end, if these organisations go bust, have to step in and pick up the tab. Now, we should not jump to the conclusion that all private care homes are bad, because they're not. But for these industries, effective regulation is crucial. Currently, regulation looks at the quality of care provided. I say this to the government. They must now also look at whether the regulation of this sector should be extended to cover the financial stability of organisations which provide these vital services for hundreds of thousands of elderly people up and down this country. The government owes it to taxpayers, they owe it to those vulnerable people, they owe it to the country to make sure we do not have a Southern Cross happening again. And ahead of the findings of the government's Dilnot Commission into the future of our care system, what has happened in recent weeks raises important questions about the future of our system of care, and not just about inspection and regulation. It raises questions about the status we give to people who perform the essential task of looking after old and vulnerable people. If it was my mother or my father, I would want the best, most qualified people looking after them, paid a decent wage. How we care for the elderly and vulnerable is a key test of whether we are a civilised society. And there are other questions. How we pay for care, what sort of care is available. We all know that this is a mounting crisis affecting millions of families around this country. Whether it is elderly people in care homes or those living at home, all of us know somebody who is facing that terrible anxiety about Britain's care system. And this is set to get worse as a result of reduced budgets over the coming years. Now, what care and how it should be provided and how it should be paid for will be addressed by the Dilnot Commission. But let's be honest, we all know there have been lots of reports about social care over the years. Every serious attempt to solve this pressing challenge has foundered, often on the failure to find a political consensus. The most recent example was the breakup of cross-party talks by the Conservatives when they were in opposition, so they could scaremonger about death taxes and threats to elderly benefits. I want to make a serious offer to David Cameron today. Let's engage in cross-party talks around the Dilnot Commission's recommendations to deliver the care system we need. We will come to these talks with an open mind about the best way forward, not simply advocating our proposals of the past. But the principles are clear. High-quality care for those that need it, funded in a fair way, with proper accountability for those who deliver the care. Let's give the British people the serious debate they deserve about long-term care in this country. It's not just for the sake of our elderly parents, but for our children who will inherit the country we are building. Let's make this the first step to a fully reformed care system where people can grow old with dignity. Let's get round the table, work in the national interest towards real change which addresses one of the big long-term challenges facing this country.